Hello, everyone, and welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions, we've got guesses. I'm Nash. I've been doing Radio Dead Air for ages. But in addition to that, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman, who also works in the mysterious realm of IT. We'll be taking your tech questions. We've got a considerable amount tonight, so that's going to be great. If you have them for us, you can send those to requests at radiodeadair.com. We will do our best to put them on for you tonight. Plus, we got some news stories. Before I get to the news stories, little cool thing to mention. I've had these for a while, but I had to get some replacements for them. So I thought I'd mention these while I got them. And this is not sponsored, by the way, obviously.
What, you're moving them too fast for me to see what even they are.
I know. I'll explain in a second, but I wish they were sponsored. That'd be nice. I'd like to get money for talking about cool stuff. So one of the issues you probably don't even realize you're having with your mouse is even if you've got, a really nice one, it's going to have some resistance on the mouse pad.
Yeah. And it should, because friction is your friend in this case. And if it was a completely frictionless surface, it would not be useful because you'd be going zip.
Well, that's exactly what I did.
You didn't make it completely frictionless because the laws of physics are not violated in this show, Nash.
The feet that normally come with it, the stickers on the bottom, they're normally just plain old rubber, and those do have a degree of resistance that if you're spending a long time at your computer, if you're working on something like Photoshop, if you're video editing, if you're gaming, then you probably don't even realize how much effort you're making to move your mouse sometimes. And they make these, which are mouse skates. These are glass, in fact. They make them specific for various brands of mice, the popular ones, or they have these. These are the generic ones, which will work on any mouse. What they are is they are just little. Let me pull these out and show you. Come on out. Come out of the packaging. Come out and play. They're these little glass dots. Hey, you can see the dots pretty well there. Little glass dots. Sticker backs. And you stick them on the bottom of your mouse. First, you have to remove the rubber feet off of it. And then you stick those in the bottom of your mouse. Your mouse moving across your mouse pad it flows. You suddenly realize how much resistance there is when you're using your regular mouse and how much effort you put into moving it, because suddenly there's none. It's so nice. I've got these on mine. Actually, I've got a combination because my hand is gigantic. I had this 3D printed part added to my mouse. It's a little finger rest on the side. And actually, I had hot glue it on. But it works very well for my entire mouse hand. The bottom of my mouse, this part, these here are actually made for this specific mouse. So I have a custom set that replace the stickers on the bottom of it. And then I have these little dots over here because there are no custom set for this. But yeah, you put them on the bottom of your mouse and it moves just effortlessly. It's so nice. Little pricey, like about $15, which that depending on your budget. But if you're doing a whole lot at your computer, it can really make a difference.
By the way, there's another thing this is good for.
Huh.
If you use this in a work environment, it can help identify when someone's stolen your mouse. You can go to machine and go, aha. Aha.
Aha.
Because you're probably going to be the only one.
All right. Well, we've got some news stories for this week.
Before we go to that, I just want to say,
okay.
We mentioned, I'm in the dark arts of IT. I came into work Monday morning, like 2 minutes late. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
And
5 minutes.
One of my coworkers said, there were some people already here looking for you. Oh, joy. This is what they need. And it was a list of stuff. a relatively massive list of stuff, and they need it by Friday in this location. And I'm like, I got it done by Thursday, but it was a kind of a slightly stressful week, but done now.
All right. Well, our first story this week, it's going to take a little bit of explanation, but
yes,
the short version.
This is the Intel story.
Yeah. The short version is Intel screwed up. And here's the slightly longer version. So what's been happening for a while now is Intel has been lagging behind AMD in terms of gaming performance. In fact, in terms of a lot of performance, Intel CPUs, the 12th gen, the 13th gen, and the 14th gen, which is really just a slightly overclocked 13th gen. Ever since AMD released their X3D RAM, and the 5800 X3D, the 7800 X3D, the X3D CPUs, they've been beating the heck. They top the frames per second leaderboard for performance. But Intel isn't going to have a new architecture, a new design for their chips until later this year. It's called Meteor Lake.
And even when they do, it'll take several months after that before you can readily find them and motherboards in.
Well, more than that, they really need a new architecture to compete with AMD. Mm-hmm. They're not going to have one for a while. This is also going to be their first chiplet design, which they've been stuck to the monolithic design. And AMD's chiplets have also, not only have they been lapping them on performance, they're cheaper for AMD to make.
Yeah.
So Intel's only play to compete with AMD was to seriously throw voltage into those chips, voltage and wattage, just to shove power into their CPUs to an insane degree. Intel CPUs use twice the electricity, upwards of 300 watts. 300
to get additional performance out of it.
Right. They don't need to run at 300 watts.
They're perfectly happy at about 85. Some of them up to 250.
And they'd have perfectly decent performance way below 300 watts. But to squeeze out those extra frames, to squeeze out that little bit of an extra score on the benchmarks, they've pumped them full of power. Not only does this make them run hotter, this potentially makes them less stable. Effectively, what's happening is from the factory, Intel are overclocking their CPUs to compete with AMD. This is very stupid. Because to compound this, Intel has never given a baseline safe spec to run their CPUs at. Normally with
they say somewhere in here.
AMD has very precise, they tell motherboard manufacturers, you have to have this power level, this thermal constraint, run for this long. This is the baseline. You can do anything else for an extreme profile after that, but this baseline has to be included and it has to be what's turned on. The baseline ensures that any CPU made for that motherboard will work properly. Anything beyond that is technically overclocking. And if the motherboards want to do an extreme profile, they're welcome to do that, but they have to include that baseline. Intel has no baseline spec. So all of the motherboard manufacturers...
It's just sort of, hey, this much voltage, plus or minus a bunch of voltage.
All of the motherboard manufacturers, typically motherboard manufacturers can't really compete very much on how the CPU performs. There are some things they can do. They can add better VRM components so that power delivery is more stable longer. So better VRM MOSFETs, better cooling for the MOSFETs built into the CPU, into the motherboard. But that's expensive. Another way they can compete to make their motherboard look like it's a better board than their competitors is to just use more power on the CPU than their competitors. Here's where the trouble comes in. Overclocking is not always stable on every chip. In fact, depending on how far you overclock, it's not stable on most chips.
Yeah.
If you put too much power into these systems, well, it can be kind of this is the insidious one. It can be kind of stable for a while.
And then the silicon starts to degrade and they start crashing. And Intel says, oh, well, you overclocked, so you're not covered by warranty.
Silicon degradation is one of the side effects of overclocking your CPU. If you run too much voltage far beyond what the CPU can handle, you actually start damaging the chip slightly and then more extensively. And eventually, the chip can't even work at the specs it's rated for out of the box. You have to actually turn the voltage down to get the thing to work at all. In extreme cases, the chip becomes useless. The stability issue is so bad that people are reporting very expensive chips. This is typically with the 12900, 13900, and 14900K and up. Some 12700, 13700, and 14700 have reported this, but this is mainly the top of the chart. And they're very expensive CPUs.
Oh, yeah.
And Intel is being kind of a butt about this because they can be. Technically,
Indeed.
like we've mentioned this before, technically, XMP memory profiles, which is the memory that claims it's like, if you see a box that says DDR5 6000, that's the speed it's claiming. That's a lie. There is no DDR5 6000 specification. There's like 4700. I think there's a different one, but there is no 6000. To get to that speed,
overclock you can get there.
To get to that speed, you have to overclock the memory controller on the CPU. And that means using all this RAM at the speed it's sold to you, you have to, your XMP profiles, you're overclocking your CPU. Technically, when you overclock, Intel says, oh, this isn't covered. Well, this is becoming a problem right now because now a lot of gamers are reporting these very expensive CPUs are not performing in a stable manner. They're crashing.
Indeed.
They're black screening, which black screens are worse than blue screens. Blue screens will at the very least give you an error message and a crash log that you can refer to and figure out what's causing it. Black
screen, everything just shut down.
Yeah, the power just goes fuck, and it's done. That's a black screen, and that's a pain in the butt to track down. This is a mess because Intel is being forced to release new BIOS for their chips with a baseline specification on these chips that the motherboard manufacturers will be required to release. When you get the motherboard, it's going to have the baseline turned on. And that means Intel CPUs out of the box are now effectively going to be much slower than they were advertised.
They're not overclocked by default. They're going to say, nope, 253 watts. And we're going to stop there.
Or even less in some instances.
Yeah.
And this means that all these people who pay, and these are like $500, $600, $700 CPUs. Very expensive, not cheap components that people have paid for with the intent that we're getting this speed for them. Now they aren't sure if they can because the speed that they were advertised was kind of a lie. And this is a mess for Intel right now. This is also like Intel didn't release. It's a combination of Intel and motherboard manufacturers.
Yeah,
Intel.
So we're seeing a 10% decrease at a minimum, and sometimes a 30 to 40% decrease.
10 to 40% speed decrease. That's well below the advertised speeds. That's a problem. And this is a combination of Intel not having a defined power specification for their CPUs, and the motherboard manufacturers, to distinguish themselves from the other competitors, they jack up the power so their motherboard looks faster. Like Asus will jack it up. Yeah.
I will say frame rate doesn't seem to be suffering as much, but that's because the games they tested aren't CPU bound.
Yeah, I mean, there are, at a certain level, competitive games like Fortnite at 1080p. You want as many frames as possible. And that is, well, yeah, CPU does play into that at lower resolutions. Higher resolutions, it becomes more GPU bound. But now AMD has had issues with this as well. But AMD has been able to stamp down on it faster because they said, hey, we have these specifications, you're not following them. Like that Asus thing blow up we had a while back, literally, it was blowing up CPUs. That's because Asus was not following specifications properly. And AMD was able to say, it's all their fault. They screwed up, not us. We told them, they messed it up. It's their responsibility. In this case, it's everybody, the whole Intel ecosystem. So if you happen to have one of these very high-end CPUs and you're having stability issues with doing CPU-intensive tasks like rendering or compiling, or if you're having issues trying to play games without black screens, check with your motherboard manufacturer. There should be a BIOS updates for your motherboard soon. What you can do right now is try to go into your motherboard settings, see if there's any sort of eco setting to turn the power, to limit the power on your CPU for now. There will be an official BIOS eventually. Just understand, one, you may be taking a major performance hit, and two, your CPU might have been damaged. So it might not work without taking a serious performance hit going forward. This is a mess. Fortunately, it's kind of the mess that affects, I say fortunately, the Halo, the super high end, people with more money than sense spending for a 14900 KS. Most people are fine. If you're like an i5 12500K or a 13700K, you're probably fine because those aren't using ridiculous. They didn't dump power into those because those weren't the ones to claim bragging rights. It was the 900 was the one they really wanted to say, this is the fastest CPU in the world, that they always want to do that. And this is their own fault for trying to do that. This is just trying to play for reviews. It's irritating. Okay, so next story. This one's funny.
Yeah. No, I don't know that we called this one advanced. We just mocked the device to begin with.
Do you, everyone out there watching, I'm watching chat, see who responds to this. Remember Juicero? Quick explanation. This came at the height of the Internet of Things bubble. Juicero was a high-end, over-engineered, custom juicer that was
a kitchen hydraulic press
connected to the internet. And part of it was you would have to get a subscription for this juicer to have these special packets for the juice sent to you. And you push them into the machine and the juicer juices these specially comprised juice packets. Then one of the reviewers, out of curiosity, took one of the juice packets and just squeezed it by hand.
And got the same effect.
It worked just as well. And we're talking a $400 kitchen juicer. And you just need to get
$5 to $7 juice packs.
$5-7 juice packs. You just needed the juice pack. Just squeeze it. And it became a giant issue. Everyone was like, what's even the point of this thing? And that was kind of like the height of, they did it mainly just to be connected to the internet, for the Internet of Things, for investors, for all that crap. Cut to today, and our new bubble is AI.
Yep.
and the rabbit. This is the new device. We talked about the what was the other one? The pin one that was coming out.
Yeah, the pin one that has sort of a little display, and you can wave your hands in front of it and not actually type or do things with it, but it's a thing.
And that one's $1,000, which includes a $300 subscription service. Well, a competitor is the Rabbit R1. You see the little device there. It's a little orange. It's a tiny screen with one button. It has a little camera and everything. It's a $200 device, an AI assistant.
Yep.
And it's on the premise of you use this for Rabbit AI. Well, and remember, this is a $200 device. Someone took the files from this device and realized the device is just running Android.
Yeah.
So
it's an Android app.
Out of curiosity, they took the files and they put them on a smartphone. I think it was a Pixel 6. A regular, very affordable smartphone, like a $350 smartphone. And out of curiosity, they were able to make it function, do everything it could do on this $200 device over on the smartphone. What that means is this $200 device is absolutely pointless. It's just an app.
Literally just, and the company's not happy.
No, they are very not happy because once they discovered people were doing this, they killed access to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which didn't stop working because there was some problem with the hardware. It's because they didn't let it connect. See, all of these AI devices, none of them are doing the AI on the device. All of them are connecting through the internet to a server, a massive, very expensive server that is doing all the heavy lifting. None of it is happening on the device.
Right. And so if you've got a, say, $13 device that you're selling for $200,
mm-hmm.
you're using that to pay for your server while you convince other people to invest or perhaps even buy out your company so that you aren't holding the bag, they are.
What is this thing supposed to do? Oh, JM, sure. Okay. So these are supposedly your AI assistant. You talk to them and like, hey, what's a good place to go to for lunch today? Or can you write out this, give me a write-up of what my schedule is going to look like. Just tell me what my schedule will look like for the rest of the day. That sort of crap. And it's just a chat GPT front end kind of crap on the other side of it. Now, the thing is, it's just an Android app, an interface, a client to connect to these servers.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't charge $200 for an Android app. What you're paying for here is their server costs. And if you want to understand how much the servers cost, I saw this today. NVIDIA, one of their new Blackwell GPU AI servers, that's good. And that includes 72 GPUs in it. Okay. $3 million. $3 million for one server. And you need a bunch of those. Multiple servers to handle this kind of load for this generative large language model stuff.
And I understand they've actually got a code name for this server build out. And it's called snake oil.
Yeah. So all of these companies have this massive overhead because they're spending on all this crazy hardware. None of it is profitable. None of it. They are not making a profit on any of it because the hardware, the electricity, the cooling, the basic real estate is all eating up their money. And nobody's paying for it. Nobody is putting down tons and tons of money. That's where this kind of trick comes in.
Yeah. I mean, your best business in the AI field right now is probably going to be a hardware reseller starting about 3 months from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, your AI startup failed. Okay, we'll give you 12 cents on the dollar for your AI equipment. Turn around and sell it for 24 cents on the dollar. Make a fortune.
Lord Tyrion, I still have no clue it's supposed to offer me over Siri and so much. It's the natural language interface, which Siri is pretty good at. And Google's assistant was pretty good at it. And Alexa was pretty good at it. This is basically a refinement of the natural language interface. And if that was all it was, if they were just calling it a natural language interface, it'd be kind of impressive. But the marketing it as AI is the stupid part. And also it gives inaccurate responses. It's expensive. Yeah, it's a disaster. So these devices for $200, you have to understand you're not paying for the device. You are paying for their overhead. You are paying for the fact that they're unprofitable. We're going to see a lot more of this.
You're paying for them to, as I said, hopefully get bought out before people realize that what they're selling is nothing.
Yeah, Raritor, I hate that term they call it hallucinates. That's an industry term from these idiots. That implies some sort of consciousness that's in and out of, it still implies a consciousness. There is no consciousness. That's why that hallucination term. It's inaccurate. It's bad. It doesn't work. It's broken. It's buggy. That's the term we should be using because it's just software. There is no consciousness to this. There is no intelligence. It's snake oil. So I find this hilarious. I'm pretty sure this is when the juicer, when people realized they could squeeze the bag itself, that killed Juicero dead. The company was just dead. I'm pretty sure this is going to kill them too. Because why are you paying $200? There's no reason to spend $200 on this damn thing. Yeah. All right. And the last story, this is kind of concerning. Well, actually, it's not just concerning. This is also maybe indicative of what's happening right now. AMD 48% decline in GPU sales over last year. 33% decline over the previous quarter. That's
yeah.
So what does this mean?
It means they're going to give up the high end and they're just going to do the median and low.
Well, okay,
which is probably good.
People aren't really buying. It's not that people stop buying GPUs. It's that we still have tons of them left over from the crypto boom. And they're perfectly good GPUs. Used, but perfectly good. And also there's still some on shelves from the older generations, cheaper and perfectly good.
Yeah.
RTX 3060, RTX 3060 is one of the most popular on the Steam survey. People have decided
it does everything you need it to do, and it doesn't cost that much.
I checked the Steam's hardware survey this last week. I did a little bit of math. 33% thereabouts of all the graphics cards in the top 10. Well, 33% of all graphics cards on the Steam survey are below $600 or below $300. A full third. And they are the most popular ones. They're the ones in the top 10. If you go to the top 20, they're the highest costing card in the top 20 is $600. Everything else is below that.
A large part of that is they're over, companies are overcharging for what they have, or not such a significant increase in power as to justify that overcharge. Now they're trying to justify the money they put into R&D, into production, etc. Unfortunately, people don't want to pay for that.
The if you look over the Steam hardware survey and you add up all of the graphics cards that cost more than $600, how much of a percent of the Steam hardware's? Less than 3%.
Not surprising at all.
Less than 3% of computer gamers have a graphics card that costs more than $600. Less
1.2%. 1.2% are still using 1050s.
That's where this is coming from. AMD is not just competing with NVIDIA. They're competing with themselves. NVIDIA is really competing with themselves. The RTX 3000 series, the 30 series, are still very popular. People have felt no compelling reason to upgrade, especially considering the RTX 40 series prices were just insane. Like literally the only reason I have a 4080 is for the dual encoders, so that I can do, and the AV1 encoding. I'm doing
multiple streams.
I'm doing 2 streams at once right now. I'm streaming to YouTube and Twitch at the same time to take pressure off the system when I'm doing gaming. Those encoders do all the work. It's great. Most people don't need that crap. If you're not a professional and you spent more than $600 on your video card, there's something wrong with you. Like, even I didn't spend the full price on this thing. I got mine for like $875 used, right? I tried to get a deal on this. Now, this also is indicative of perhaps AI stuff is starting to cool off as well, because a lot of these companies are, if they can't get a hold of the super high-end ones, they're using gaming cards, just like they did with crypto. Now, so we've heard reports that AMD is, for the 8000 series, there's not going to be an 8900 XTX. There's not going to be a top of the line competing with the 5090. And that's probably, as much as it sucks, as much as the prospective 8900 XTX, what we saw of it looked really cool, it's not going to make money. The money is at the low end. The money is where, right now, there's a whole bunch of people who would like to upgrade their GPU, but nothing on the market is affordable or offers enough of a compelling reason to get rid of what they had. If you have a GTX 1080, you still have a very reliable 1080p graphics card right now. You have 12 gig, Otaku Boy is 12 gig 3060. Probably won't upgrade until I get off AM4 in about 5 to 6 years. The next generation, it looks like the top end, I don't think we're going to see them with something that costs more than $600. Probably something costs, I think they're going to top out around 600 on their next GPUs. And that's probably smart. If they can, at the lower end, offer, and also apparently, these are rumors, keep in mind, their next ray tracing engine is a considerable improvement over the 7000 series.
I mean, it would kind of have to be.
Well, I mean, the 7000 is much better than the one that was on the 6000.
No, what I mean is the amount of time and effort they've spent on it. Yeah. It had better have to be.
Like right now, if you want pure rasterization, price performance, you go AMD. If you want all the bells and whistles, you go NVIDIA. And it depends on what you have, So competing at the low end makes a lot more sense. If they can offer something with really good ray tracing performance, 12 gigs of RAM, of VRAM on it, and bring that in at around $350, $300, and something that competes with the 3060, with the 4060, heck, even the 5060, they'll probably have a chance to get a much bigger market share than they have. Because when AMD originally, after the bulldozer debacle, when AMD released Ryzen, that first generation of Ryzen was not quite as good. It was definitely not as good as what Intel had at the time. But they also understood they had to bring the price down to what they actually could provide to you for that money. Like the Ryzen 7 1700X was not the best CPU. It was a pretty good CPU. And in some cases, it offered all those extra cores. They were doing a whole lot of cool stuff, but they were not as good as Intel. And because of that, the price was commensurate with that. AMD needs to do that. They need to get aggressive on their pricing. Part of other rumors they have is they are not moving to GDDR7. They're staying on GDDR6. GDDR6. I have to enunciate there. They're staying on GDDR6 for the next generation for the 8000 series of GPUs. Makes sense because it's a good cost cutting measure. And if they don't need all the bandwidth, if they can accomplish that without like the GDDR6 is like a 24 gigabit per second tops out bandwidth, and GDDR7 is like 40 gigabit per second. So if they aren't saturating that, if they don't need 40, they could probably get by with GDDR6. It's a marketing, and GDDR7 is going to be expensive for a while, so that's going to increase the price of stuff. All in all, what this means is we're going to probably see AMD and Intel refocus on the place where the price range people are actually getting a graphics card, not the $1,000, $1,200, $1,600 graphics cards. The $300, the $400, the $500 graphics. $500 is even pushing it for a lot of people. 300 is heck, 300 is pushing it for a lot of people. But because right now, we mentioned this in earlier episodes, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X have more powerful GPUs than some of the entry-level GPUs, the $200, $300 available right now.
And as we've mentioned before, it's probably going to, it is going to make our budget build at the end of this year very difficult to beat that.
Because if we were to keep it around $600 to compete with the consoles, it's going to be rough.
I mean, unless some real massive deals drop.
We'll have to see how much more performance, how much more stable ARC can be by the end of the year, and if there are any deals on ARC's Alchemist stuff. But yeah, it's rough out there. I'm hoping a little bit of this is indicative of maybe some of the AI stuff is pulling back. I don't know. We'll see. All right, time to get to your questions now. We've got several. I've actually 2 more came in while we were doing this.
Okay.
So let's go with what we already have. This is from Double Eck 12680. This is from our YouTube comments. Hi, Nash and Mike. I have a remote control question. I have a Harmony Remote 650 that's showing its age. I know that Harmony stopped making remotes a few years ago, and I'm looking for a replacement. I was wondering what you could recommend. That is an excellent question, because what started happening in recent years is there's been a lot more consolidation in the streaming box itself. I've noticed that like the remotes that start coming with the televisions and whatnot, and especially with my Xbox remote, they're all like, well, we'll do the universal stuff for you. Because I have an Xbox, my Xbox One, I'm not even using a Series X. My Xbox One handles everything. It's got my television, it's got my surround system, the audio receiver, and the Xbox all through one remote by itself. And it's as far as this Logitech, I don't know if Logitech is even still making them.
So what we're looking for is a universal one and all for one, including streaming remote.
Yeah. And there are not quite so many anymore. It's yeah, because see,
your best bet may be to look at, okay, so a number of brands like Samsung and Philips will have a universal remote for all Samsung or all Philips TVs, and then say, oh yeah, and we've added the streaming stuff on here as well. That might be the route to look for whatever you're doing.
Yeah, because it's Logitech. Because let's see, Logitech Harmony was the 650 is 650/665. The only other one in the space right now is Sofa Baton. There you go. Yes, Seth mentioned it. Sofa Baton is the only one in the space right now that's competing. And
yeah, it's not, by the way, that's not to say there aren't going to be like 12 different things on Amazon with Scrabble branded names on them that claim to be doing the whole thing. There probably are. Most of them indifferent.
Yeah, it's Sofa Baton. Let me put the pic over here on the screen. Sofa Baton U2 for $60. That's about what you got. No one else has really entered the remote control space. It seems like that's kind of a dying area. Is not only do people have unified remote controls, they also have smartphone apps that do the same thing as well. Like you control your
which, by the way, are also probably selling the data that you generate when you're changing channels.
Because I've got one for my Xbox. I had one for the Roku until we got rid of the Roku. So the market for remote controls have kind of dried up, unfortunately. But if you want to look for someone who's still here, Sofa Baton is doing it. Logitech seems to have been like, we're out. That's the best we can give you. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, it's kind of, and it sucks. I hate when there's an electronics field that still there's a call for, but people are saying, nah, I can't make money on it, so I'm just going to withdraw. And we lose, a lot of good stuff. Andres Nova, you can send it in. We'll see if we have time to get to your question. All right. This is from T. Catherine. This is a long one, but we'll try and do what we can here. Hello, Nash and Mike and all the floofies in the menagerie.
Probably not the dog.
Yeah.
Not the dog.
Not the dog. We don't like the dog. Not like Christy Noem doesn't like the dog, but we don't like the dog. Topical. I probably won't be able to catch the stream live because of my work schedule, but I have some questions about modems and routers. My internet started randomly crashing and restarting and crashing, restarting, and never ending cycle this week. I think your problem seems to have been the modem router, our surfboard SBG 7600 AC2. Since my neighbors weren't having issues and Xfinity didn't find issues on their end. Trying out all the troubleshooting online, it still didn't work. I had to replace it immediately because work from home, went out internet, went out pay. Went to Target to get their cheapest option with the plan of asking for recommendations and returning what I got. Well, Target had on sale last week a bunch of stuff that was pretty bare, and my frustration didn't pay close attention. Accidentally picked up a router with no modem. Didn't realize until I got home, and now I'm wiser and humbled. Stock was pretty low on everything, so I went to Best Buy to get a modem. For modem, I got a Netgear CM1000. Let me have a look at that one. Okay. What do we got there? What are the features on you? Just make sure your DOCSIS 3. That's a Nighthawk. That's not terrible. It's a doc. Yeah, let me have a look at it. CM1000. Ooh, that's a pricey one too. Good Lord. $230 on that one.
Like they said, Target was having a sale, so maybe it was a bit less.
No. She went to Best Buy to get that one.
Oh,
because the original router didn't have a modem in it. Well, all right. The good news is, was there anything I could have done to troubleshoot the modem router I had? No.
Not really.
This is why we tend to recommend do not get combos. If it could,
because when one thing breaks in it,
routers can fail a lot more than modems will fail. I'll tell you that for money. I've had more routers fail over time, me and friends I've known, and it typically tends to be the radio that goofs up and causes problems. If that is, my modems, however, have never died. I've had modems just go and go and go like tanks. The only reason I replaced modems is for speed upgrades, not because the modem itself went bad. I still have a modem in the closet as a backup that can do some of the speed this one can. And if anything happens to this,
it's your backup device.
Yeah. But routers,
we've only replaced them here when we've switched service providers, and they go, "Oh yeah, no, we don't accept that model." So
routers die more than modems do. It's just I for whatever reason. So do not get combos. Always separate those into two different devices for exactly this purpose. Let me see the TP-Link Archer AX3000 router. In terms of modems, I think you may have overspent a bit on the modem and underspent a bit on that router.
Agreed.
Let's see. First of all right, I'm going to look at what Best Buy has, just to see what they have in store. Not you need to go to Best Buy, but just because you can probably find these online too. While the Netgear Nighthawk series, the modem you got is pretty good. It's also not. It's. I tend to like the RS Surfboards better, and they are, to my experience, RS Surfboards is sort of the cable industry standard for cable modems. Let's see here price wise what you need. To be a DOCSIS 3.1 is what we're looking for. And
I will say the one advantage to the Netgear one that you got is that basically Netgear said to all the cable companies, no, we're gonna be compatible with you, which you can't always say for every other model. I mean, Aris is pretty good about that, but I think there's one or two smaller ones that they go, no.
Okay, so you got if you went to Best Buy, I got this. You probably got it for $170 because it's on sale right now. And as for DOCSIS 3.1, some of these are still 3.0. DOCSIS is the cable speed it's the not just speed standard. It's the cable interface standard for how data transfers over the cable internet. The DOCSIS 3.1 is the current one we're using. It's the fastest one possible. It gives you 2.5 gigabit or something like that is the max. It's the one you should be using going forward. And you've got a DOCSIS, the CM1000 you got is DOCSIS 3.1, so that's a good one. I'm trying to see competitive wise what you could have also got from Aris. You know what? I think you got a deal there. Aris would have been the same price. They're the one that competes with that would be the Surfboard SB 8200 from Aris, and that's $170. So I'd say you got a deal on that Netgear. Hold on to that modem. That modem is perfectly fine. So you're good there. As far as the modem goes, you're good. As far as your router goes, you're probably going to want to spend a little bit more on that. We recommend Asus, not because we get a kickback on that.
Which would be nice if we did, but we don't.
Yeah.
But because Asus has produced just historically really solid routers,
at least in our experience.
Now you don't need to go their full Republic of Gamers, Crown of Sauron looking thing. That's way overkill.
Let me see what they have. What's available for there. The AX3000. It's a little more expensive than the one you got. I will admit, it's about $140. See, is there something closer to 100 that's better? Let me see. No, it's this is the one. AX3000, it's Wi-Fi 6, which is kind of the current standard. Wi-Fi 7 is coming. Let me bring it over here.
Wi-Fi 7 is stupid expensive right now, so
stupid expensive, yeah. It's just a rough recommendation. The AX3000, this should do the trick. It's going to be reliable. It's going to last you for a while. And it'll be fairly easy to integrate into your network. Not a whole lot of crazy stuff here. The software is easy to configure and work with. And that's what I would recommend out of the options right now. TP-Link, not a good name. They are very, I've had so many TP-Link devices just straight up fail. That as a brand, they're not a good name. Not a good name. So yeah, choice-wise, it would be the Asus AX3000 model RT AX58U. And you might be able to find a good price for that online, or maybe even a used one if you look on like eBay or something. But that's about what you could go with for standard home user. I don't think you're doing like 20 different people screaming 4K videos while playing video games at the same time. I think this will be just fine. This is about what we have. I think ours is a little bit bigger than this because that was all that was available at the time. But this is about where you need to go. The modem you got is good.
Newegg has it the same price, and they have free delivery. So
yeah, for our modem router combos, always junky. I wanted them to work so bad because I have so little space. It's not a matter of they're junky. It's a matter of that. If one goes,
sometimes part of it is they can be junky, but part of it is also that they might cut a few little corners on it because they know they're not having to connect to anything else outside the unit they've just sold you.
Yeah, it's for like in this situation, if the router died but the modem was still working, you'd lose Wi-Fi, but you could still have used an Ethernet cable to keep working. And only one device, you would only been able to work on one computer, but you would have been able to keep working while you got a new router. So, I mean, if the modem, but like I said, it's rare I see a modem go bad. They obviously do because they do get replaced, but it's rare I see it. I've personally never experienced a modem going bad. I know people who have, so it's not unheard of, but it's just the point is, with these devices, if one goes, both goes. And considering that these need to be reliable, you have to just separate is better with them. It's just, it always is. The bundle is a bad deal. Okay. Hey, Nash and Mike and Possum. I guess we're just ignoring the cats now. All this EK water blocks news has me wondering, is there really any point to water cooling anymore? I was thinking about trying it out for a fun project because it just looks neat, but I'm not sure I want to put the money into it if it's not going to help my system at all. Just wondering. Thank you. Kevin?
So a large part of it depends on your use case. Nash uses water cooling because you want quiet in the room because you're doing a lot of this stuff professionally.
Yeah. And also I also do like a little bit of overclock, but mainly overclocking in terms of the automatic clock. Okay. Well, first of all, silence, like Mike says, it's much quieter to get the same kind of cooling levels than air cooling because it doesn't have to work as much.
Yeah, and unless you're putting the computer in another room and running long cables, which some people have done.
Some people do, yeah. Studios did that for a long time.
Yeah.
In this instance, I mean, there's still point of water to water cooling, because that's why all-in-one water coolers come from. They work great. The issue here is the custom stuff. When the first all-in-one water coolers came out, they were better than air cooling, but could not compete with custom water cooling. That's no longer true. Now we have all-in-one water coolers that perform just as well as a custom water cooling loop that you set up yourself. And if you don't understand what we mean by custom water cooling, an all-in-one liquid cooler, it's got the CPU block, the pump, the hoses, the radiator, all in one unit. You don't have to connect anything. You don't have to mess with anything. It just comes out of the box. You slap it onto the CPU, you put the fans on it, and it goes. Custom water cooling is all the parts are separate. You have to get your own block. You have to get your own pump. You have to get a reservoir to handle liquid. You have to get the tubes, either soft or hard, which is way more of a pain in the butt. You have to get tubes to go from place to place. You have to get connectors and fittings. And it's a lot more expensive and it's a lot more complicated. If you were getting a performance edge out of it like you used to, it would still be, yeah, there'd be a point to it. Now, less so. Mainly, and this is the one place where custom water cooling has an edge, is graphics cards water cooling. Unless you buy a graphics card that comes with a liquid cooler, you're stuck with an air cooler. If you get a GPU that has an air cooler on it, you're stuck with it. Custom water cooling a GPU, because of the boost clock, the way that CPUs do the same thing, but GPUs now, they'll run as fast as they're allowed to by how hot they get. If you can keep the GPU cooler, it will run faster, longer. And that's where water cooling really shines. You can get a considerable, not like a jump up on a SKU to a higher product tier level of performance increase, but you will get a noticeable increase, like maybe 20, 30 frames per second at the higher end by water cooling a graphics card. That's about the last place where the performance difference matters. Will it help your system? Not to the point that it would justify the cost, in my opinion. If you're doing it as a project for fun and you can afford it and you're willing to put in the time to screw around with it, go nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep in mind, it is a regularly time-consuming thing, because you got to, do regular maintenance on it in a way that you wouldn't.
Regular maintenance is in like maybe every 6 months, which
yeah.
But yeah, you gotta sometimes you gotta check on it, make sure the liquid is still good. Some good liquids you can keep in there for a year or more, depending, but you might have to change out the liquid, you might have to clean out the stuff in the loop. It all depends. Mainly the big issue is, yes, the time involved and the price. It is way more expensive than air cooling. It's way more expensive than even a good all-in-one cooler. Like a custom water cooling loop. Let's see, just off the top of my head, and I'm going to try and go with as cheap as I can think. Let's say $150 for a CPU block, just the water block that fits on top of the CPU. Say about another $50 for soft tubing and connectors. I'm not even going to go hard tubing. Another $50 for the soft tubing and the connectors. Maybe another $75 for a 360 millimeter radiator. We'll go with decent enough fans, like say $30 for fans, 3 fans, $10 fans. What are we already at there? It's 50, 75. That's about $400 or approaching $400 just to cool the CPU in a custom cooling loop. Or you could just spend $150 on a high-end all-in-one liquid cooler and get the same performance bump as you could for see how the price is. It's really, at this point, I think custom water cooling is on the way out, unless you're talking about systems where you have no choice, like with we talked about the server stuff that EK was working on. Like, that is still going to have a life in it, because that's an economical issue in terms of how to cool that much in a fashion that's affordable. But for home users, I think we're moving more and more to all-in-one coolers taking the place of it. I'd like to see more, like I'm trying to remember. There have been convertible coolers for GPUs before, where you could add on an all-in-one cooler, like an all-in-one cooler frame, where you just take a regular off-the-shelf all-in-one liquid cooler and convert it to work with a GPU. I'd like to see more of that, because then technically you'd have 2 all-in-one coolers in your system, but it would be still way cheaper than a custom water loop and less maintenance, less headache. So you'd get the performance benefits without all the cost. So, short answer, you're not going to see a big boost if you do it custom. Not to justify the extra cost. Just go all in one, unless you want the project. If you want the project, if you want to do it, if you want to show off, if you want to go nuts, but understand it's going to be a considerable investment of time and money. And maybe you want to put that into other components of your system. Like, think about that. That's a $400 investment, or like at most $150 investment. That's another $250 you could have put in something, like you could have saved for a graphics card or a better CPU or more RAM or an SSD. That's a big amount of money you could have put in components. So that's there. Okay. Got a couple new questions came in. Let's get to those as we can. 3 questions. Woo. Oh, we're popular.
Okay.
Okay. Pirate Novelist here. Been a while since I submitted a question. I'm looking at eventually getting into 3D printing for a potential side job. Pretty sure I know which direction I want to go with the 3D printer, but I'd like to eventually set up a dedicated PC. I'm thinking about getting into 3D modeling for 3D printers. Should be more focused on a GPU or CPU power when it comes to looking at specs for modeling. Well, Josh, generally GPU. But the good news is these days, CAD modeling, while it can be CPU intensive. Also, it's not for 3D modeling unless you're doing some crazy stuff, like crazy level of complexity on that model, which for 3D printing you really don't do. You don't get insane with those, because, well, no, I take that back. Some people have pushed it to the freaking limits, but you don't need a very expensive computer to do that these days, because the headroom on these things are so high. Like, in the past, yeah, you needed a really good CPU, you need a really good GPU, but as the power levels on all of these things have gone up, CAD hasn't really. It's just a 3D modeling area. You're moving around a 3D space. We're not talking about
the printer complexity has gone up dramatically, but the software and hardware requirements to control the printer have not scaled to the same degree. They've not needed to.
Because you don't have to do any shading. You don't have to do any ray tracing. You don't have to do any DLSS on CAD. It's not like Blender. It's not like what you're looking at in CAD is not the final product. So they don't have to do a lot of extra stuff to it like they would in a video game. That's where all the high-end expensive stuff goes. I'd say you could get by with an RTX 3060 GPU for modeling, unless for this is just for 3D printing. Now, if you were going to be doing something for like Blender, or if you were going to be doing something for the final product on the screen has to look really good, that's when you get to a higher level of hardware. But this is just 3D design, and it's not that demanding. It really isn't. So an RTX 3060, 12 gigs. VRAM tends to matter more, I will say. You want to get a graphics card with as much VRAM as possible. There are some with 16. Maybe look at that, but you don't have to go to the high end. AMD is really generous with their VRAM. The 4060 Ti 16 gig is kind of expensive for what it offers. An RTX 3060 12 gig. I would look at that. That would seem to me like a good, that would work pretty well, because the RAM, you'd have plenty of VRAM. And as far as the CPU, me personally, I like AM5 right now. If you're stuck for money on that, then maybe look at AM4 and get a 5000 Ryzen 5000 generation CPU. Maybe a Ryzen 7.
Now, one thing to also check, I believe we've covered it, but I just say whatever 3D printer you're looking at, they're going to have possibly proprietary software. So look at what it says the specs are too. They may have, because we've seen this with software before, they may have a minimum spec that is higher than what we've said, where the software may have something coded into it that goes, no, this is not cool enough. You can't install me. It's rarer these days, but it does still happen.
All right. Erica. Hello, Nash, Mike, Floofs, and Possums. Great. Now the possums are like a fixture now. Great. I've been seeing more and more articles saying you don't need to buy third-party antivirus software anymore to waste your money when you buy them. Windows Defender is all that is needed. It's also saying that except for some very specific circumstances, VPNs aren't worth it for general security either, as most ISPs and governments have found ways around them. I've been using WebRoot for ages and have had no problems with them, but is it true I no longer need to use them and can just rely on Windows Defender? Thank you, Erica. For the basic stuff, for general web browsing, for protection and virus scanning and all of that, yeah, Windows Defender really does kind of handle it all. It does malware, all of that stuff. It's pretty comprehensive. That being said, I like, and this is just personal preference, but I like having Windows Defender and Malwarebytes on my system, because sometimes, we've said this before, there's sometimes things Malwarebytes catches that Windows Defender doesn't, and vice versa. So I like to run, and I don't even get like the paid for version of Malwarebytes. I just keep Malwarebytes on my system, and like once a month I run it to make sure something hasn't slipped past Windows Defender. You don't really need more. If you were going to get a different one, Bitdefender is a nice alternative to Windows Defender. I've been messing around with that just to see. But Windows Defender in and of itself, for most people, is fine. And the fact that it's free is even more compelling. Now, as far as VPNs, for general security, ISPs really, governments, they haven't really found a way around VPNs. The way around VPNs is a subpoena. That's how they get around them. Because, all right, to explain, if you're not familiar with what a VPN is, it's a virtual private network. What you do is, instead of the internet going straight to your computer, which gives your IP address, your information, your ISP can see what traffic goes straight to you. A VPN puts another computer between you and the internet. So all your ISP sees is all of the data going to that one computer. It doesn't see you send data to any other computer anywhere else. It only goes through that one system.
And ideally is encrypted, so all they can see is that you're talking to it, not what you're saying.
Right. Now, if say the ISP says, hey, we have reason to believe they're doing something, we're going to go to the government and we're going to go like sue you and get a subpoena to find the records of that VPN and find your information. Or, the government says, hey, we think you were doing something wrong. We're going to check and see. We'll subpoena them. And they might do a secret subpoena and stuff like that. They do that sort of stuff. But that's the only way really around it. So someone would have to be generally really interested in you and what you're doing to see that. Or they do a general subpoena or for some reason, and then they get your IP address and see, but they would have to go through legal channels to find out that information from the VPN service. Or the VPN could cooperate. That's another thing too. But they'd have to go through legal channels for that. The software itself, the VPN, they're still secure. As far as general security, though, that's not going to keep viruses off your system. It's not going to keep malware off your system. It's not going to protect your system in that way. Mainly what it does is it prevents someone from seeing your traffic and also doing something called a man-in-the-middle attack. Generally, a VPN comes in really handy if you're on a network you don't trust. Like, say you go to Starbucks with your laptop and you want to maybe, you know what, I haven't looked at my bank in a while, but I'm at Starbucks. That's when you connect your VPN because you're on a network.
Now, note that the important thing to note there, though, is you might be connecting to Starbucks router, or you might be connecting to someone who has renamed a router to look like Starbucks router, and you're connecting to them. And if you're connecting to an adversary router before you get to your VPN, you might still be not secure.
But that's unlikely, I'll say. Still, the main problem is someone else on Starbucks' network is able to attack you from at that area. That because a Wi-Fi, while it's secure to some degree, it's open. It's a network people are moving around on. Stuff can happen. There are exploits. There are 0-day attacks people can see what you're doing. If you use a VPN in public, like you're at a hotel, you're at Starbucks, you're at an airport, that's how you get an encrypted connection that no one else can batter their way into. That's where it comes in handy for security. Home use, not so much. Mainly the big use of VPNs for home is so your ISP cannot see what you're doing. If you are torrenting, if you're doing copyright infringement stuff with torrents, if you're in Texas and you're an adult and you would like to view pornography as a legal adult, but their stupid freaking laws are saying, no, you can't do that. Well, VPN says, I'm not in Texas, so I can look at this because I am a freaking adult. What is wrong with you? That's where it's useful for home users. And I guess if you're really concerned about what your if something maybe weird your ISP, keep a VPN on, sure. Just understand a VPN is going to degrade your speed a little bit because you are going through a secondary computer before you get to the internet. However fast there is however, generally more WebRoot is, as long as you're not being charged for your internet, for your antivirus, I would say it's fine to use something that's not Windows Defender as long as you're not being charged for it and it's a reputable company. WebRoot's a reputable name.
There's a couple that are not.
Yeah.
Either because of what things they've done or current circumstances. What's the one that's based out of Russia?
Kaspersky.
Use right now.
Kaspersky. Yeah, that one's a no-no. I think the government purged. You're not allowed to use Kaspersky at all if you're in any government system or whatsoever.
Yeah. No.
WebRoot's got generally a good name. Bitdefender is generally a good name. But if you're paying for it, I wouldn't. Unless you want one of the extra features they're paying for. I don't know what all extra features there are that Windows Defender doesn't have expressly need. You recommend ESET? Yeah, that's not a bad one too. But Windows Defender will handle the basics. We'll cover typically the basis. Okay, so let's see. The last one, Kayla here. Oh boy. Oh, there's a video. Oh no. Oh boy,
dear.
let's see what we can do here. All right, let's we got video. I was not expecting this. All right, let me download it.
How are we going to share this with me in real time?
I will try.
Email me the link. I'll look at it here.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. I'll forward this to you.
Right now the stream is showing me an ad. I'm not sure for who.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. All right, let's send that along. It's not a long video, but let's see. Okay, no preview or install. We'll download it then. Save as. There we go. Give me the attachment. That there. Okay. Live, everybody. Was not expecting this.
Yeah.
We have video. Neato. Okay, I will bring it over here onto the screen and we'll see what we got.
Forward it to me yet?
Yeah, I forwarded it to you.
Hasn't shown up
yet. Yeah. It's sent. Let's see what we got here. Oh, well, that's not working. It's only 800 kilobits. That's tiny. I don't think it might not have worked right, Kayla. Let's see. Yeah, let me see if that opens with a regular video player. Oh, there it is. That okay, well.
Yeah, hold on.
Oh dear. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm gonna turn it up here, but yeah, that works. It's not a big file, but
okay, what am I looking at here?
Yeah, that's not good. Oh, it's over on my headphones here. Okay. Yeah, put this on. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the context of this?
Okay. My laptop started making this noise. Pretty sure it's the fan, but I'd like an expert opinion. Should I be concerned that it sounds like it's coming to take off? Yes, Kayla. What that is, we'll do that again because I'm probably annoying the hell out of everybody, but
Does sound like a fan.
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, that's your laptop's fan making that noise.
And now we talked about laptop fans before. Usually they can be quite easy to replace. Sometimes they're not because they're attached to some additional cooling component. It's going to depend entirely on what make and model of laptop you have.
Yeah, that fan is done. That fan is going. It's potentially, that sounds to me like a bearing is going. It shouldn't be sounding like that. Now, to just maybe see if there's something else involved, you want to take a can of compressed air and blast out go to the vents, take it outside, please. And get out any dust that's in there. That's a first step there. And see if maybe that sorts the issue for you. But if that doesn't, because compressed air is like $8 for that. That's a cheap attempt to see if you can take care of it. If that doesn't do the trick and it still keeps making that noise after you've gotten all the dust and crap out of it, that says to me that fan is on the way out. They do wear out over time. It's one of any component in your system with moving parts, which is fans, mechanical drives, any device that's got a moving part in it will wear out eventually. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Some of them will last longer than the life of your computer. Some of them won't, and some of them will fail much sooner than they should. What this sounds like is there's a bearing in the fan maybe potentially gone, or some other issue, but the fan is on its way out. This is not one of those, unless you're experienced with opening up a laptop, I would not recommend trying to replace this yourself. Now, you can, if you really feel adventurous, get the make and model of your laptop, Google it, look on iFixit, or for a service manual, find instructions on how to disassemble your laptop. Typically, the fans are not an expensive part. $10 now, at most.
I'll say this: where I disagree with Nash here is I would do. I agree on the lookup. Some models of laptop, it is amazingly easy to replace the fan. It is literally 2 screws, a 3-pin header. You unplug, put the new fan in, plug in the 3-pin header, put 2 screws down. Literally that easy. But in a lot of cases, that I would say that's the office type laptop, the laptop that a company buys 500 of at a time, because they've got to be relatively easy to fix.
Okay, Justin Nova said, blasted it with compressed air already. The video was afterwards. You don't want to hear the pre-blast version. That fan's dying.
Yeah.
10 to, I would say a replacement fan. Typically I've seen, if it costs more than $15 for that fan, I would be surprised.
Well, if it costs more, it's because the fan is hard soldered or hard connected to another cooling component.
Sometimes, or sometimes they use a crazy custom configuration that's
crazy heat pipe thing or something. Yeah.
If you do take it to someone to replace it, you can expect that job, I'm going to say, to cost $100. And most of that is going to be labor.
Yeah. But again, I'd say check the iFixit first. It may be amazingly simple.
It may be simple. Yeah. And then you'll just have to find out what type of fan it is. And if it's just a wire most of these fans, they plug in, there's a little wire. You have to very gently and carefully pull it out. And you're going to have to work it a little bit to get the plug out, because it's not just one.
Yeah, unless it's certain models of HP, in which case it literally is. I've replaced a dozen of them.
Most of them, they kind of clip in, so you got to slowly, carefully work it out of that little slot. Yeah. But the fans, they're not, in and of themselves, not hard to replace. It's just however comfortable you feel. You have any suggestions on how to make it do that noise on purpose, or how to make it cheap? Why would you want to make it do that noise on purpose?
I can tell you exactly why.
Why?
The next version of the Annoyatron.
Okay.
There's something to be said for mildly annoying a coworker that you don't get along with in a way that is not traceable back to you. Not that I have done that in a long time. And the last time was by buying all the Cheetos in the vending machine.
So yeah, if you do it yourself, if you feel comfortable doing it yourself, just understanding that her IT department can't hear it, so they won't fix it. All right. there's a program called Prime 95. It's free. It's benchmarking software. Actually, no, Prime 95 might be a bit much. Let me see. What's the other one I use? Okay, there is benchmarking software called OCCT. It's free. It's what's used to stress test systems or check how fast they are for comparison. Benchmarking software. And what you'll want to do is put it through a stress. Let me show you what it is. OCCT. You can find it at ocbase.com. It's free software. And what you can do is put it through what's called a stress test. You'll have the option to just go ahead and click on it. And if it runs a stress test, it will push the CPU and the GPU in a laptop, typically, to its limit. That will make the fan go full power. And it will make that noise. That will definitely make it ramp up to its fastest speed. They'll hear it. They'll definitely hear it. Prime 95 will also do it, but Prime 95 is not exactly as user-friendly, and also it's a little more stressful than necessary. So I think OCCT will just do the job by itself.
Well, of course, part of that's going to depend on the install procedures on the computer. You might not actually be able to install it.
It's true. Prime 95 doesn't require install. But again, it is crazy. It is really crazy on your system. But yeah, OCCT should do the trick.
Another possible way to stress the system in case you can't install the software would be loading up multiple YouTube tabs and having them all play simultaneously. Sound off, obviously, so that they can hear,
right,
the fan.
It's not as reliable as using a benchmarking software, but if you can't install anything, it's what YouTube, but just keep loading up YouTube tabs until
43 tabs playing the 10-minute version of this corrosion should stress the computer pretty well.
Yeah, that should do it. So that's another way to get around it. Just you want to push the system as much as you can. So yeah. All right, that is going to do. Wow, we had a lot this week. That's great. It's going to be a long one on YouTube, but that's going to do it for this week.
You say this is going to be a long YouTube. We both watched H-Bomber Guy videos.
Yeah. Tell him to Ben fucking Aquaman. To this day, can't not hear that in my head and laugh always. All right, folks. We'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions for us, by all means, send those along to requests@radiodeadair.com, or you can put them in the comments for this video. We will add those along. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Have yourselves a great week. Good night.